Have you ever had the feeling that something in your relationships quietly changed, but no one ever said it out loud? People still talk to you, still respond, still include you, but something feels different. The tone is slightly off. The attention is less consistent. The energy is not the same. And the most confusing part is that there is no clear moment when it happened. No obvious conflict, no direct confrontation, no clear explanation. Just a gradual shift that you can feel but cannot fully explain. In many cases, what you are sensing is not distance, but a subtle loss of respect. And unlike dislike or conflict, respect rarely disappears all at once. It fades quietly through small patterns that often go unnoticed in the moment. One of the most common ways respect begins to fade is through inconsistency. When your words, actions, or decisions change depending on the situation, people begin to lose a clear sense of who you are. Consistency creates predictability, and predictability creates trust. Without it, others start adjusting how seriously they take what you say. They may still engage with you, but the weight of your words decreases. Over time, this shift becomes noticeable not through what people say, but through how they respond. Another factor involves boundaries. When boundaries are unclear or constantly adjusted, others begin to test them, often without realizing it consciously. If a person repeatedly agrees to things they do not want or avoids expressing limits, it creates a pattern where their time, attention, and preferences become negotiable. This does not lead to appreciation. It often leads to reduced respect because others begin to see flexibility as lack of stability. Respect is closely tied to how clearly a person defines and maintains their limit. Emotional reactivity also plays a role. When someone reacts strongly to small situations, it signals a lack of control over internal responses. This does not mean emotions are wrong. But when reactions are frequent, unpredictable, or disproportionate, others may begin to adjust their behavior not out of respect, but out of caution or avoidance. Over time, this changes the dynamic of interaction. The person is no longer seen as stable, but as someone whose reactions must be managed. This reduces the natural sense of respect that comes from emotional steadiness. Another subtle pattern involves over-explaining. When someone constantly justifies their decisions or seeks approval for their choices, it can unintentionally signal uncertainty. Instead of reinforcing confidence, excessive explanation can create doubt in the listener. People begin to wonder why the justification is necessary. Confidence, in many cases, is communicated through simplicity. When decisions are expressed clearly and without excessive defense, they carry more weight. When they are over-explained, that weight begins to diminish. There is also the issue of self-positioning within conversations. Individuals who consistently downplay their own opinions, defer too quickly, or avoid disagreement may believe they are maintaining harmony. But over time, this pattern can reduce how seriously others take their perspective. Respect is not only about being agreeable. It is also about demonstrating that your perspective has value. When that value is not expressed, others may stop expecting it. Another important factor is alignment between words and actions. When someone says one thing but behaves differently, even in small ways, it creates a subtle inconsistency that others notice. These inconsistencies accumulate over time. Each one may seem minor, but together they shape perception. Respect is built on the expectation that words reflect reality. When that expectation is not met consistently, the perception of reliability begins to weaken. As these patterns continue, the shift in how others perceive you becomes more visible, even if it is never directly stated. One of the first signs is a change in attention. People may listen less carefully, respond more briefly, or engage with less interest. This is not always intentional. It is often a natural adjustment to how much value they assign to the interaction. When respect decreases, attention tends to follow. Another noticeable change is how often your input is considered. In group settings, your opinions may be acknowledged but not acted upon. Suggestions may be overlooked or replaced quickly by others. This does not necessarily mean people disagree. It means your input carries less influence than before. Influence is closely connected to respect, and when one shifts, the other often follows. Response time can also change. Messages may be answered later, conversations may feel less prioritized, and interactions may become more transactional. These changes are subtle, but they reflect a shift in how others allocate their time and attention. People tend to prioritize interactions they find valuable or meaningful. When respect decreases, that priority often decreases as well. Another important shift occurs in how others test boundaries. When respect is strong, boundaries are often assumed and rarely challenged. When respect weakens, boundaries may be tested more frequently. Requests may become more demanding, expectations may increase, and limits may be pushed. This is not always conscious behavior. It is a response to perceived flexibility. If boundaries are unclear or inconsistent, others naturally explore how far they can extend them. Over time, this can reinforce the pattern that led to the initial shift. Interestingly, the process of losing respect is often gradual, but the awareness of it can feel sudden. You may not notice the individual moments when perception changed, but you notice the overall difference. This can create confusion because there is no single event to point to. However, when you look at patterns over time, the shift becomes more understandable. It is not caused by one action, but by repeated signals that shape perception. The important realization is that respect is not something that is requested or demanded. It is something that is inferred from behavior. People observe consistency, boundaries, emotional stability, and alignment, and from those observations, they form a perception. That perception then influences how they interact with you. Changing this dynamic does not require confrontation. It requires adjustment in behavior. When consistency increases, when boundaries become clearer, when responses become more stable and deliberate, the signals begin to change. Over time, perception adjusts accordingly. Respect is not restored instantly, but it can be rebuilt through consistent patterns. Ultimately, the shift in respect is not random, and it is not fixed. It reflects how behavior is interpreted over time. By understanding the patterns that influence that interpretation, you gain the ability to change how you are perceived. And with that change, the quality of your interactions begins to shift as well.